Uh, this Zoom is being recorded, so you can send it to your friends later if they miss it. This is the Marin Avenue Corridor Safety Improvements webinar. So we're here to talk about that. Let me just give a brief introduction. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we'll be hearing from Councilmember Brent Blackaby of District 6 and Deputy Public Works Director Wahid Amiri about the planned improvements along Upper Marin Avenue, so the circle and above, as well as the results of the streetscaping survey many of you participated in. Following their presentation, we'll enter a Q&A session during which you can ask questions regarding this project. The fire department is also here to answer questions regarding the project you might have. Over the last couple of months, I have been working closely with Public Works to gain insight into their process and to learn more about safety improvements that can be made on many Berkeley streets, including Marin Avenue. As you may have heard me say before, I care very deeply about issues of public safety in all of its forms, especially pedestrian and traffic safety. We should all move through our neighborhoods and streets safely. Marin is one of the steepest streets in the Bay Area and has over the years been home to numerous close calls, serious injuries, and unfortunately, several fatalities. I really want to express my gratitude to my predecessor, former Councilmember Hahn, for championing this project and working towards the goal of safer streets. I'm also deeply grateful to staff for taking the unique challenges of Marin seriously. Before we hear from Public Works, I'm going to kick it over to Councilmember Blackaby, my partner in crime, and he's going to introduce himself, and then we'll begin.
Thank you, Shoshana. I'm Brent Blackaby, Councilmember District 6. It's a really pleasure to be here tonight, and thanks, Shoshana, for being. It's also great to be joined by our esteemed Public Works and Fire Department staff to share more about the Marin Avenue Corridor Safety Improvement Project. This project will also support the evacuation route vegetation clearing project the fire department's managing, as Marin Avenue is one of those key evacuation corridors. As Councilmember O'Keefe mentioned, and as we all know, Marin Ave is really steep, a grade of 24% in some places. It was originally built, for a cable car, which never came to fruition. And our Vision Zero plan that the city has passed identifies Marin and neighboring streets like Spruce, Grizzly Peak, and Euclid as high injury and kind of high focus streets for that effort. In particular, my kids go to Cragmont Elementary. The location of that school, with properties spanning along various high injury streets on Marin and Spruce, creates a really challenging situation where Cragmont students cross two high injury streets on their way to and from school. And as Councilmember O'Keefe mentioned, since 2012, we've had more than a dozen very serious injury incidents, including 6 fatalities. So this is a real concern, and we've got to do more here. In May 2021, after many Cragmont children and parents saw a really terrible collision on Marin that resulted in the death of the driver and passenger of one car and injury to the driver of another car, the Transportation Department made a number of key safety improvements to Marin, refreshing some of the double yellow lines, reprinting crosswalks, installing signs to warn drivers, and adding additional speed limit signs. As Shoshana mentioned, our predecessors, Councilmember Wengraf preceded me, and also Councilmember Hahn, initiated those changes. Since those improvements were made, the Transportation Department's developed additional strategies to enhance traffic safety for all users, whether you drive or walk or ride a bicycle. And I think many of us were on a webinar last fall about some of the upcoming improvements and a preview of what our team was thinking about. All this work is really important is the number one priority for the city. These changes will clean and clear the line of sight for increased visibility, making Marin Avenue safer for all of us. And we're going to need your help because, again, some of us who live along Marin Avenue may be asked to help maintain some of the vegetation that's going to be replanted there to make clearer sight lines. And again, will be kind of a team effort to make this street safer. I want to thank Public Works Director Terrence Davis, the Transportation Department, including Deputy Director Wahid Amiri, who we'll be hearing from shortly, our Parks and Rec Director, Scott Ferris, and our Fire Department, Chief Sprague, and Deputy Chief John Fischer, who's also on the call tonight. And thank all of you for participating in the survey and for coming here to stay informed about the project and learn more give your feedback, and help us take the next step. Together, we're making really meaningful progress. We know there's a lot more to do. And as Councilmember O'Keefe mentioned, both she and I are really committed to addressing this and making real. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Deputy Director Wahid Amiri, who is been driving this project, and he will kick off a presentation to give us an update on where things stand. So Wahid, over to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Blackaby, and thank you very much as well, Councilmember O'Keefe, for the introduction and opening this up. So, Geoff, if you want to pull up the presentation, please. While we go through the presentations, I see that attendees are coming in. I am as the host, as you might see, so I will look up and down a little bit just to see if there's people in the waiting room and allow them in. There you go. Let's go to presentation mode, please. So, all right. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wahid Amiri, Deputy Director for Public Works, Engineering and Transportation, and a splash of ADA compliance. Today, with me, we have our Deputy Fire Chief, John Fischer, and our Consultant Design Engineer, Geoff Rubendall, who supported the design. Thank you for joining us again for this very important community workshop on the Marin Avenue Corridor Safety Project. For many of us here tonight, this corridor is part of our daily routine, as Councilmember O'Keefe alluded to, whether we're walking, biking, or driving. Tonight, our discussions will center on proposed improvements aimed at finally resolving persistent safety concerns that I've been hearing for the year and some change that have been employed with the city of Berkeley so far. This process has been data-driven. It's factual. We've reviewed and been informed by crash data, as Councilmember Blackaby mentioned a little bit earlier, that unfortunately there has been a number of crashes and fatalities. We've looked at all the primary collision factors to make sure that we're on point. We reviewed traffic volumes, speeds, engineering evaluations, and most importantly, ever since last year, community input from previous meetings with District 5 and 6. So together, we are exploring solutions that balance mobility, safety, aesthetics, fire resilience, and maintenance. So tonight, with our team, we'll walk through our design recommendations. We'll present the survey results for the landscaping and the hardscaping options and talk about some of the nuances there, and how all of this aligns with fire evacuation needs, emergency responses, and also we'll give you guys a brief update on our next steps towards implementation. Next slide, please. The previous ones, Geoff, if you go back to agenda. Yeah. Thanks. So I'll kick things off with some project background and purpose. Geoff, the consultant, will take us through the detailed engineering assessment performed by our consultant team with feedback from Public Works, Engineering, and Transportation. I'll come back and put my Parks, Recs, and Waterfront hat on and discuss the streetscape improvements. And then our Deputy Fire Marshal, John, will take you guys through the fire safety and vegetation management. And then I'll go back and close it with our proposed next steps and associated timelines. Next, please. 1 second, let me admit 4 more people. Okay. Thank you. Marin Avenue is east-west collector street with, as Councilmember O'Keefe mentioned, I believe at the beginning, a very steep slope and multiple neighborhood intersections. What makes it unique, as mentioned, it's one of the steepest corridors in Northern California at approximately 26%. I think across the Bay, only San Francisco beats us, as they have more corridors that are a little bit more steeper than here at this area. So Marin Avenue was identified as a priority corridor due to persistent concerns about speeding, pedestrian safety, poor visibility at intersections, and inconsistent stop sign configurations. Through our engagement, one of the things that our community members emphasized was concerns over safety, obviously, and a strong interest in both traffic calming, but we also heard that they want to maintain a natural aesthetics. So that was something that we believe our design effectively strikes that fine balance where we are going to propose meaningful traffic calming improvement, and but at the same time also enhance aesthetics and not take aesthetics in the opposite direction. Next slide, please. As some of you may recall from our initial or kickoff phase that I call, we conducted a pair of community meetings back in September of 2024, as Councilmember O'Keefe mentioned earlier, championed by our previous council member, Sophie Hahn, and also our previous Vice Mayor, Susan Wingraf. We met with the District 5 and 6 residents, separate sessions, one in person, one in Zoom. And during these meetings, we discussed existing issues and introduced our proposed study, which includes traffic engineering safety, opportunities for streetscape improvements, and compliance with PRW, which is again Parks, Recreation, and Waterfront, and our fire department priorities and initiatives. So tonight, we'll share the findings of our traffic engineering study, results of community survey related to the streetscape improvement, and an update from the fire department, John Fischer, about fire safety considerations along this corridor and probably a little bit further out outside of this corridor as well. With that, I will hand it over to Geoff to present the findings of our traffic engineering studies, and then I'll pick it back up when I have my PRW hat on to talk about landscaping and some other ideas.
Thanks, Wahid. So again, my name is Geoff Rubendall with Fehr Peers. We're the consultant helping Wahid and staff evaluate collect data, evaluate some data, come up with some meaningful recommendations to address some of the issues along the corridor. So I've got a series of slides that kind of summarize the work that we've been doing since the community meeting last September, and happy to also follow up with any questions at the end of this as well. So first, we wanted to be very open and transparent that we have documented the history of those reported crashes that involve cars, people walking, people biking, and these are just the documented. There wasn't have a report that there was something happened. Recognizing that there's likely a lot of other types of things that are underreported. And really just this reinforces the sentiment we've been hearing is that there's some serious safety issues that we want to address through the means that we have available on the streets here. We collected speed data over the course of a full week back in fall, and what we're showing here is the 85th percentile speed over the course of the corridor, and that means that 85% of the cars that we collected data from traveled at or below these numbers, which is still well above the posted speed limit, and in some cases the outliers, those above 15%, were well above 30, 40, some even above 50. So it kind of reinforced some of the data points that we've been provided from folks in the community, that there are some serious speeding issues, both kind of collectively a lot of speeding above the speed limit, but also some real problematic outliers as well. We also collected volume data during that same period, and this graphic here just shows, which is what we all would tend to understand, is that there's the volume of traffic along this corridor is the highest at the low towards the circle, but it's still pretty high on the northern end of our study area, still over 5,000 cars in each direction or in combined directions over the course of a typical weekday. So in order to come up with some reasonable and industry best practices related to traffic calming and safety improvements, we have a couple different resources we used here. First one is California's manual and uniform traffic control devices. This is the required document that stipulates how and what you can put on the public roadway. We also looked at a federal pedestrian safety guidebook called the Guide for Improving Pedestrian Safety at Uncontrolled Crossing Locations, which has an additional research-based elements of proven and effective traffic control safety devices, as well as looking at the city's Vision Zero program and their traffic safety best practices to make sure that what we do have, what the toolbox that we utilize here, is consistent with what we would do elsewhere in the city for kind of just user understanding and familiarity. First thing we did with the data is we looked at what's called a stop sign warrant, or an assessment on which intersections may warrant all approaches having a stop control. There's a pretty detailed description on what criteria is needed to warrant an always stop control. Generally, so we did collect intersection volumes, side street volumes, and the the low volumes on the side streets did not unequivocally suggest that an always stop control is necessary, but there is an engineering judgment and safety element where that does allow us to investigate some locations where adding a fourth stop sign to a three-way stop controlled intersection does have some reasonableness and basis in engineering, but want to be very clear that stop signs alone are not adequate traffic control devices to slow people down, both here on this corridor, but elsewhere. And the city has a pretty long history of understanding that, and that's why they have a traffic calming program that has a lot of other elements that they take into account. The federal guide, the FHWA guide, has a lot of research-based material related on understanding the relationship of speeds, volumes, and roadway geometry, number of lanes in each direction, and what sort of devices or countermeasures, they call them, are appropriate in certain conditions. You don't need to understand this table to understand what we're going to be doing proposing on Marin, but basically we did want to acknowledge that we did a pretty robust assessment based on the data that we collected to make sure that we're consistent with the research at the local, regional, and federal level. Once we completed all of these assessments, we came down to 4 different types of traffic control measures that we're proposing or recommending along the corridor. I've got a series of slides here that describe these each in more detail, as well as where each of these things are proposed to be, recognizing that an always stop control isn't necessarily a traffic calming measure. It's more of a traffic control device, and there is a methodological a reasonable reason and places where we are going to recommend a couple extra stop signs. And I'll kind of walk through these other items here in the next few slides. One of the features that we're calling is what's commonly referred to as a hardened center line. It's a raised element. It could be concrete, it could be rubber, but it's something that is physical and vertical along the center line of the roadway that reduces the comfort of a vehicle making a turn sooner than they should be. So if they're making a turn from a left turn across the center line, it gives them a little bit more of a bump that has a traffic calming or speed reduction result. And then there's several other, this engineering drawing here on this graphic is actually what the city has been, as part of the Vision Zero program, looking at different size vehicles and what sort of engineering specifications would be needed for these to be effective throughout the city. And the other feature we're looking at is at intersections to put in quick build curb extensions, also referred to as slow turn wedges. They are elements, combination of paint, plastic, other vertical elements to slow down the speed with which a vehicle can make a right turn. We will be looking at emergency vehicle access, large vehicle access to make sure that certain movements can still occur, but that they can happen at a lower speed. And this, combined with the clearing of vegetation and sightlines, will allow every intersection should have a much more tighter area to minimize the conflicts between people driving and people walking or crossing the street. The last one is along the roadway segments themselves. We're referring to as mid-block speed infrastructure treatments. It's quite a mouthful. It's really lane narrowing and bringing the cars towards the center of the roadway, so there isn't such a wide variation of folks zigzagging around cars, around other things, but actually keeping the cars as far away from the sidewalks, which optimizes or maximizes their line of sight at intersections. And this will be done through a variety of paint, plastic, and other quick build treatments. So this is a very simplistic version of where we're proposing to design these improvements. The 2 intersections that have the highest likelihood and reasonableness for a 4th stop sign would be at Cragmont and at Oxford. This is consistent with other planning and recommendations to provide additional locations where both directions have to come to a complete stop, in addition to additional traffic calming measures. We're going to be looking at these curb extensions, quick build, slow turn wedges at all 4-way intersections. in talking with fire department, there's some concern about some of the intersections are a lot tighter, and they want to be able to maneuver some of their medium-sized fleet to be able to make turns safely. So we'll be evaluating which of any of these that may not fit that criteria. But the goal is to have them be at locations where there's where the installation of stuff like this would improve the line of sight between somebody crossing the street and somebody making a turn. And on the mid block, we've identified 3 of the longer segments here, but we really plan to do this for the entire corridor and integrate it into the intersection, so it's going to look somewhat consistent throughout the corridor and really blend into the intersection treatments, so it looks more like a streetscape lane narrowing and not a separate measure altogether. It's just bringing everyone who's driving closer to the center line. And with that, I'll pass the mic back to Wahid to talk about some streetscape.
All right. Thank you, Geoff. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right. So thanks to Councilmember O'Keefe and Blackaby, we were successful in administering a survey after the fall meetings to seek input from this community about which 2 options were preferred by the residents. As you can see from this slide, we had 2 options. Option 1 was the landscaping, and we were pretty strategic as far as what we wanted to go in there because of vegetation management and some other issues. So even with the landscape was native, drought resistant, and obviously fire safe, we provided a list of pallets and different plant options for the community to choose from. And then option number 2 to the right was the natural stone. And again, here we were strategic as well, as we wanted angled boulders and not round rocks, where we didn't want Marin Avenue to turning into some sort of a bowling alley coming down 26% slope. So next, please. The survey was a huge success. Surprisingly, we received over 200 responses. As you can see by the data collected, obviously landscaping was favored over hardscape by a factor of 2 to 1. Next, please. The survey it showed strong community interest in shrubs, perennials, vines, and ground cover, which again, the later of the 2 were a little bit less popular. So I think based on the survey and the option that we provided, the perennials were of choice. We will be using that input, perennials being the preference from the community, to review the city's approved list of drought-tolerant and fire-resistant plants to consider along this corridor. Next slide, please. Okay. This is where we have an ask, or most appropriate reminder for our community members here. As mentioned during our last community engagements back in September of last year, and as we stated in the survey, if landscaping is the preferred choice, which it has been determined, we require a commitment to ongoing maintenance, which, as you can see from the slide, does not entail a significant level of effort, but it does require commitment. As we had committed to and promised, Public Works PRW will procure and professionally install the plants, but we will need community commitment to water them. This is crucial to ensure they thrive and enhance the corridor's aesthetics and environmental value, which was one of the community members' requirements in addition to traffic calming and overall safety. As the slide indicates, the establishment period will be approximately 3 years. These are designed for low maintenance. That was, again, part of our strategic vision and measures that we provide or want to put out there. It is low maintenance. Watering at best when it's summertime, it's weekly. And then towards fall and winter and spring, it's more monthly. We're aiming to not get a resolution or commitment here, but we did want to mention it in this presentation, and we'll continue to work through our council members' offices to fulfill this requirement with the community. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to John Fischer, our Deputy Fire Marshal, to discuss vegetation management, and I'll pick it back up to talk about next steps.
Thanks, Wahid. Yeah, I want to really start off by saying thank you to council members and Wahid for inviting us to this. The goal of the fire department here is to make that corridor safer. And what we see that is protecting the transportation and moving down this road by how we can help is limiting the vegetation, which has an impact on the Marin, which really is the sight line. And when you have people trying to cross the street or step out, vegetation in that form can interfere with the sight line, which makes it harder to see people, especially with Craigmont School. That can be a very dangerous area. So that's where we want to step in and help out and lend whatever expertise we can. We respond to all of the calls that you see in the earlier slide. So what we've learned through the time evacuation study that's going to be released soon is that, as we knew, Marin is going to be one of the major routes for not only people in an event of a fire or emergency to get out of the hills, but is also an access point for us to get back up. So we're committed to using some grant funding to remove the vegetation the first 20 feet at each intersection on Marin, just on Marin. We'll do that in our WUI division in our program and get that removed. We're also committed to clearing back and making sure there's clear sight lines on the public right of way, and to keep an eye on how the trees in that area are growing over the road itself, because in the event of a fire, it's important to remember that any of these plants that are highly flammable, that they can produce flame lengths that are at least 3 times the height of the plant itself. So that just makes it, if we have fire burning on the side of the road or up in the trees, as you've seen, that makes it extremely dangerous for citizens who are trying to evacuate the hills, as well as our resources who are responding to get up there to alleviate the situation. Like I said, we'll remove the plants in the medians on the side and clear out a little bit on the public right away. We'll be looking for like highly flammable species and making sure that we're keeping this clear and protected for people evacuating and us getting up and to alleviate. Other than that, that's what I have for the slide. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next slide, please. All right, so as promised, going forward, our project team will refine the recommendations and develop design plans for our roadway safety improvements as we've discussed tonight, including more design review with fire, as Geoff mentioned a little bit earlier, to ensure emergency and first respond vehicle access at intersections. And one of the things that I'm very keen on, as responsible for both engineering and transportation, is that I want to make sure that our most important stakeholder or partner, if you will, the fire department and first responders, our designs complement what they do. And I mean, the way I look at it, and I've said in many meetings, engineers and first responders and fire departments, they have the common goal, which is public safety, right? And I want to make sure that whatever design we implement, we tightly coordinate and make sure that our first responders and during evacuations or any catastrophe, that we don't regret being too harsh or one-sided. So that's always something as an engineer, as part of the leadership with Public Works. I'm very keen on that, and we'll continue collaboration to make sure that every intersection, everything we're putting out there, it definitely has also emergency access and first responders in mind. So with that said, we are anticipating implementation of the safety improvement project by early 2026. We have funding in place for the design. We do want to wrap up the design in the next couple of months to bring it in for Public Works review. And then our goal is to move forward with formal solicitation, get a contractor on board. And then at that point in time, I do sense that we might balance and fulfill some of the requirements for the implementation with Measure FF funds once it's in. So based on the rough schedule that I have in mind, I do think it'll line up very nicely with, again, our community members here experiencing the massive amount of improvements by early 2026. So with that, that concludes our presentation, and I'll move it forward to opening it up for questions or any good jokes you guys might have. We're here to listen. We can raise your hand. We have some questions that I started answering. So I'll hand it over back to Councilmember O'Keefe to see if you'd like to facilitate Q&A, and we can be available for answers, hopefully.
Okay, yeah, let's go to some questions from the chat. I think it's actually better if we just take them from the chat, if that's okay. If people could just put your questions in there. We have a few people looking at it, and we'll try to, if there's more than one person asking the same question, we can try to group it. So give us a moment. I'm sorry, Wahid, I didn't know you were going to ask me to do this, so I don't have anything ready to go right now. But if you give us a minute, we can organize our document with questions.
And the first question is, can any of us sing? So I'll say for myself, absolutely not.
Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Well, how about let's take a question. Let's have people raise their hands, and then we'll that'll give us a second to get more organized with the written questions. So if anybody has a question right now, go ahead and raise your hand. Jerry, you can unmute yourself. Yeah, what's your question, Jerry?
Yeah, I was in the process of typing it into the chat.
Thanks.
First off, I want to thank you and Director Amiri and Fehr Peers. I think having this study, a data-driven study is great. So I think this is really good. A couple of things just in the presentation from Geoff at Fehr Peers, I was kind of alarmed with, as probably you are, the average speed uphill, being in the 24 to 27 mile an hour range for a 20 mile an hour posted, and 22 and 24 mile an hour going downhill. And that related to the volume of traffic, with this 8,300 vehicles going from the circle at least up to Spruce, and then finishes off at 5,200 vehicles by the time you get up to Keeler or Grizzly. It's the sheer volume of traffic as well as the speed. And, at the opening, Director Amiri characterized Marin as a collector street, when really it's performing as an arterial. It's functioning as an arterial. And we would know that if you are building an arterial and you're following FHA guidelines, 8% is the maximum. So how do we reduce the volume of traffic as well as the speed? The speed is definitely a problem, but the sheer volume of traffic is really untenable. And right now it's backed up from the circle to to Shattuck to Oxford. And that was about 20 minutes ago before we started this Zoom. So anyway, those are my questions. Thank you. Let me lower my hand.
Thanks a lot. Wahid, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take part of it, and Geoff, I'll call on you since you did the data collection. So as far as the speed, we do feel all of these measures that Fehr Peers and Geoff talked through will help quite a bit with the speeds and visibility and safety. So that's the main purpose of this project, is to be able to help with that. We've also put some four-way stops at a couple of locations to also, again, part of safety measures, but that should also help slow down some individuals that are just pressing the gas up. With that, Geoff, do you want to jump in regarding the second part of Jerry's question?
Yeah, so with the way we collected data is we actually had hoses on the ground for a full week, in the fall, and it collects for every pair of tires that cross it. It registers as a vehicle, and we get volume, we get speed as part of that. So what I presented on those slides was the 85% and below. So 85% of all the volume that was collected there goes at those speeds or lower, but it includes outliers well above those numbers. But that's an engineering a method to collect a speed data point for a typical corridors, and the results are it's over the posted speed limit. Speeding is an issue. Traffic calming and speed management techniques are needed. So that's kind of the very, very quick and easy data informed statement. In terms of reducing volumes, that becomes a little bit of a different animal, just because there are very few parallel or alternate routes, and looking at much larger network changes are things that we've talked with staff a bit about over the years. We're really focusing on what we can do to make speeds along this corridor lower and just reduce the overall amount of fast moving large metal objects going through this corridor. And that is hopefully going to improve things to some degree. And we'll be working with the city to make sure that there's revisions to that as we go through the implementation process.
Yeah. And if I can add, this is the beauty about quick builds. One of the things that we're doing a little bit different at Public Works is we're not implementing projects and walking away. Once this is done, I do have staff lined up within Public Works to continue the assessment and make tweaks and see where we were a success, where we need to do a little bit more, where we need to do a little bit less. So that opportunity is always there as well to make sure that we get close to the bullseye that's as feasible as we can get.
Great, thank you. So once again, thanks everyone for your patience while we got our Q&A organized. I think what I'm going to do, we got 6 people with their hands up. I'm going to call on those 6 people, and then we also are keeping a list of all the questions in the chat. So we'll go from live hands to chat. So after this, just go ahead and put your question in the chat. I'll like to call on Barbara Schick. You have your hand up? Barbara, are you there? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. What's your question, Barbara?
Okay. I'm glad to hear that they're not going to remove all the bushes along Marin, because I was told that that if a car has lost control, if it goes into bushes or into like a chain link fence, sometimes it can decrease the speed and prevent a tragic accident. In my experience, if I don't drive, so I do a lot of walking, and sometimes I've seen something that's very dangerous for somebody crossing a street, and all that has to happen is that the vegetation be trimmed. And in one case, it took like 6 months for them to trim, and Los Angeles going into the circle, I reported it in January. Councilperson O'Keefe tried to speed it up. May. And by the way, they did a wonderful job. I can see the cars coming, and I think the cars can see me. So if there's any way to coordinate with the tree crews if somebody says, hey, can you do a little bit of trimming so that we're safer crossing the streets, that it not take forever. The other thing I've noticed is too many vehicles that are definitely over 3 tons. What was it? A day or 2 ago, I saw an 18-wheeler going up Marin, crossing Santa Barbara. So that means he was going to get to Marin and Spruce, and that's steep. And he seemed to have sacks of building material on him. That's definitely more than 3 tons. So I don't know what you can do. They look at Google and they just do whatever Google says. They don't obey the traffic signs that if you're over 3 tons, don't use this street. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'll say just real fast, Thank you for reaching out to my office. I'm sorry we weren't able to make that happen quicker, but I do want to encourage anyone, if I'm your council person, it is very appropriate, and I welcome you to reach out to my office if you have any kind of concern like that. We are not miracle workers, but we can always try and certainly answer your questions. Wahid or
And
Geoff, do you guys want to
yeah,
comment on her other comment?
yeah, regarding the weight limitation, we have refreshed the signs up there. We did receive feedback from the community members late last year as well too, because there was a lot of construction activities going on in that area. Unfortunately, to your point, it all has to do with Google Maps and capacity of the roadway, and that it's very clear that the limitation is there. And one thing that we've also coordinated once we've refreshed the signs just to make sure it's very visible with our partners at enforcement to do periodic. But unfortunately, just like many of our departments, we're very limited with staff and resources. So they have committed to doing periodic, but unfortunately, you know how those things are. You have to really be there at the right time to catch them, or else they just go through and we do get the complaints, but it's difficult to catch them in the act or find out. There's been some incidents where if a resident could give us the name of the trucking company, we can go a little bit above and beyond and reach out and say, hey guys, we've got information that some trucks that is managed by your firm are traveling through here. We just put courtesy reminders to your drivers that there is a weight limitation. So we've done a little bit above and beyond, but we'll keep an eye on it as well too, to see if there's anything else further that we can do to help with that situation.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Let's see. So I'm going to I see more people are putting their hands up. So let me just say the people that I had on my list when I said how we were going to do this are Dibs, Rachel, Michael, and then Michael Ray and Dave. And after those questions, then we're going to go to the chat. And so if you've raised your hand after that, I see you, but we're going to move to the chat first before we get to your questions. So Dibsy?
Yeah, hi. I would love to have, I live on Shattuck, and, crossing both on foot and on a car, it's very challenging there. It looks like we're not going to get an uphill stop sign, and I get that. But we do have a mirror, so if you're heading north on Shattuck and you hit Marin, there's a mirror which can be very, very helpful for being able to see the uphill traffic coming at you. And without that, because of the incline of the hill, it's pretty hard to see. But that mirror is constantly moving and becoming less useful when it's out of whack. And some of us over the years have tried to keep it focused in the proper way. But is there a way that the traffic people could fix that mirror so it doesn't move out of whack and it can continue to be useful? And then I would really say that as far as the speeding up the hill, one of the partners I would like to see is enforcement. You could come on any given day, and I mean, I think your analysis looked at that and get a lot of enforcement in. People go very fast through that intersection, and it feels like that needs to be a regular event so that people start getting it that you can't zoom up the hill. So I would really hope that the police department and enforcement are in on this process too, and commit to doing enforcement on a regular basis. That's all.
Great, thanks. And I'm taking notes as well. So
Okay.
we'll be following up with the police department to pass along your comments. And you can also reach out to my office directly, and we can pass that along.
And regarding the convex mirror, absolutely. So we can take care of that. If you would like to put in an email request with information to Councilmember's office, from there, I'll get our traffic maintenance to come out and take a look at it and see what we can do to stabilize it. Okay.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, that's the kind of thing we're very well equipped to pass along issues like that. So reach out. Next, we have Rachel.
Oh, hi, thanks. I want to echo what Dipsy just said about the traffic enforcement, and it's been mentioned several times in the chat. it seems critical for controlling speeding. You know, you can put in stop signs, you can put in this, you can put in that. People will speed unless they're afraid they're going to get caught and charge the big fee. So that really is essential. It also would help with the big vehicles, right? Enforcement. I assume there's no parking on Marin. You didn't mention it, but have you decided to make it no parking on the street?
Yes, it is going to be no parking because part of the traffic calming and slowing people coming down and up is narrowing of the lanes, channelization and side the shoulder striping that we're going to put to give the visualization of narrowing lanes, which again will hopefully also help with bigger vehicles.
No, it's great to have no parking. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I just wanted to confirm that that was the plan because it wasn't really specified. I think
Yes.
that would be a very good first step in terms of visibility and all of that. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, and again, this has been in the chat, there were several different approaches mentioned for traffic calming. The four-way stop sign, we all know what that is, right?
Mhm.
And you're proposing to add those at Oxford and at Cragmont.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about the Cragmont one, but we'll see how that works out. Because I crossed that intersection, you know, it's awfully close to Regal, you know, above. There's not, anyway, that we understand. The other items that were mentioned were not all that clear. I'm sure to you experts, they make sense, but it sounds like you're talking about adding various kinds of striping and plastic was mentioned several times. I think it's just not totally clear to us, civilians, what all that means. And it's a little concerning that if you add a lot of stuff that people are not used to, they get confused. You know, I just wonder if there's going to be a specific chart showing all this that, you know, citizens could see and potentially comment on. That all went by pretty fast.
Thank you for the comment. I can react, or Wahid, do you want to take that to start?
No, just high level, and then you can take it, Geoff. So yes, I do agree that a lot too much is not good, but we showed specific treatments, quick build treatments for intersections. But as I mentioned earlier, the next steps we want to provide a full-blown sketch drawings that for the community members to take a look at, where it shows intersection by intersection and it shows the treatments that we're proposing, which would also feed into the contractor's bid and documentation for implementation.
Oh, great. So there will be an actual detailed specific
Absolutely.
plan chart that will have an opportunity to comment on. I
Absolutely.
think that would be a good idea because you have a lot of people on this call who use that street, have used it for decades. You may as well get the benefit of their experience. I really can't emphasize that enough. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, just to add to it, the materials, the methods, the way it looks like, it will look new and different because it's not there today, but it is very typical treatments in other cities as well as in the city of Berkeley elsewhere, just not in this context. But we'll be providing details as part of that design package, as Wahid mentioned, that will be a lot more visual and help understand what it is. There's just to kind of stay on that topic for a second. There's another comment about it's gonna be confusing. All this new stuff is going to be confusing. The intent is not to make it confusing. We will do it in a very practical, engineeringly rigorous way, and we will be looking at through the lens of how is this different than what's out there today? How and what can we do to help during that interim phase of it's not there and then it is there, and there are ways to improve the messaging for a driver, for a motorist, so they know what to expect as they're navigating, but also for pedestrians. So just wanted
And
that's
if I can chime in regarding Craigmont with your concerns. So there was a study prior to my start with this with the city, Safe Routes to School assessment, and that intersection actually, given the school that Councilmember Blackaby mentioned his kids attending, uh, it was slated or recommended for flashing beacons. So we took this opportunity to be efficient and strategic with what we had with the funds available. Since we didn't have the funds to put the flashing beacons, this opportunity presented the ideal situation to also do traffic calming, but also feed into that, school safety, pedestrian safety. So, and again, this is kind of ironic for me because I have a lot of requests to put four-way stop signs where it does not warrant it and I cannot protect it in the court of law. But this is like one of the unique locations that It's not your black and white typical engineering formula that equates it, but everything else, associated characteristics, and then engineering assessment, that we are going to put all-way controls. But again, although it doesn't meet specific, number and criteria, it will be defendable with professional engineers in the court of law. So it's a unique situation. So I do think it'll benefit quite a bit, and you guys will see the safety factors come in.
Just one more thing about the Cragmont intersection. I know there's a school there. I volunteer there. I walk back and forth all the time. Kids don't come out on that side of Cragmont. They come out on Regal Road and they come out down on Spruce.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it would be a good idea to encourage children to cross the street there in that awkward place. Do you see what I'm saying? Just something to consider.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned prior to my story, there was a safe routes to school assessment. So there was a detailed report outlining all this, but we'll take a look at it too. But we hear you.
Great. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
I just want to say in the chat, we'll go back to questions in a second, but I see somebody referencing the intersection at Hopkins and the Alameda. And I just want to say, Wahid would never create an intersection so awful and confusing, right, Wahid? Promise. Nothing like that is going to happen on Marin, right?
No. That's something what our council member Han brought up when I started too. So it's on my radar.
Yeah. It's the worst intersection in Berkeley. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So next up we have Michael. Michael Ray, you're next, but Michael would love to hear your question.
Hey, it's Michael, just Michael. I don't know if the answer just went by. My question was about the parking impact of narrowing the lanes, because earlier there was discussion of basically removing all parking on Marin as part of this process. So I'm wondering if that's going to happen. And also, Councilmember O'Keefe, can you get rid of that horrible intersection your predecessor tried for years?
I'm working on it. I haven't been in office that long.
Thank you. You have a little time. I'll just ask about parking for now.
Yeah, thanks. Wahid, do you want to answer his question about parking and narrowing the lanes? If you could just clarify.
Can you repeat them? I'm sorry, I was admitting some people that were in the waiting room, and I was admitting, so I missed part of that. So
my question is about the parking impact of narrowing the lanes. There was earlier discussion about this program of basically removing all parking on Marin, and I'm trying to figure out if that's where this is going.
So right now, and that was mentioned during our initial kickoff meeting with Councilmember Han and Vice Mayor Wingraf. So in order to do the lane narrowing and bring in meaningful traffic calming, we do need to prohibit parking. Right now, when we assess it, there really is no parking or people not utilizing the parking space as it is on Marin, east and west. So, one of the things we're looking at in order to implement these additional measures is that we would prohibit parking, and that was discussed and established with Councilmember Han and Vice Mayor Wingraf back in September of 2024, and that was the basis of our design that we conducted in-house before we brought on Geoff and Fehr Peers to kind of take it forward as the project evolved to be much bigger. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Great, thanks. Next up, Michael Ray.
Thanks so much. Councilmember Han had talked about a longer-term plan of changing traffic circulation on the street between Spruce and the Circle and converting the downhill lane to an emergency-only lane, which would increase access to the hill for emergency vehicles and also take care of there's a lot of sort of common criteria in the accidents. They're happening downhill. So I was just curious if that's still a long-term plan that the city is looking at. And thanks very much.
Hi, Michael. Nice to see you again. I think I met you at Councilmember Han's community meeting. Is that you and your wife, I think, right?
Yep, that's correct. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah. So it is. But as I mentioned, I would really like to roll out this round of improvements, engage it, as I mentioned earlier. Once we have all these safety measures in place, we're not walking away, Michael. You have our commitment. I have staff that's lined up to be able to do assessments, and then from there, as I mentioned earlier, because the one-way conversion, it is a big endeavor. And I know John Fischer is here, but There's been feedback from Chief Sprague, and there has been other conversation with other leadership within the city. But I do want to give these improvements an opportunity to see what we gain and go back to see what we need to tweak. But that recirculation is not off the table. But at the same time, given our challenges with funding and $30 million deficit that we're dealing with, we have not been able to move forward either. But again, depending on Measure FF and where everything lines up, that's the most immediate next vehicle I see to be able to fund an initiative of that nature.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Absolutely.
that. And I'd just like to add that, yeah, I think, this is what we're doing to improve safety on Marin now. But even if this is a wildly successful, Marin is still going to be Marin, right? And it's never going to not be one of the most ridiculous streets in Berkeley. So we will always be innovating. We'll always be looking for a way to improve it, even once these are done. And that's certainly a very interesting idea that's remaining on the table, but long term.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit to that, a big piece of the time evacuation study shows us that the idea is out there that we just would one-way streets to get everybody out of the hills, but another piece of that is like we need to get first responders up to mitigate the problem and to assist people that need evacuation out of the hills. So we're really doing a lot of work right now with fire, police, PW, and Office of Emergency Services to really start to define what are the main routes we would go up the hill and what are the areas that we perceive people coming down the hill, and really trying to study how do we keep these roads so some of them we can have people getting out efficiently and us being able to get in efficiently. So that would be another piece that we will definitely be looking at if we're talking about that on Marin.
Thanks so much. Okay, next, and this is, once again, this is the last person we're going to hear from audio, and then we'll go to the chat questions. So Dave.
First, I would just say, if you're talking about taking away street parking on Marin Avenue between the Circle and Grizzly Peak, my concern there would be then, are the residents expected to then park into the driveways? Are they then backing out into Marin Avenue to, ingress, egress their property? So that would be a concern of me. I live on the 1700 block of Marin, and plus, so I'm severely disappointed that this is only talking about the Fountain and up, and not our section, which is a freeway, to all the traffic here. So, and I run the trails in Tilden Park a lot. And so I go up and down that section a lot. And so if I had people backing out of their driveways, that seems to be dangerous as opposed to them being able to park on the street. I have no problem going up and down Marin in that case. So secondly, to just addressing speed on Marin Avenue. Now, I know this is a Circle and above, Circle below. I've lived here for 30 plus years, and it's got to be decades since there's been any kind of enforcement along Marin Avenue. I'm one block over from Solano. If I go and I want to walk, which I can do on Solano Avenue, there's numerous times when I'm almost run down in intersections. So, we've had 2 fatalities, pedestrian fatalities in my block since I've lived here. I've had numerous car accidents and such, and it's all speed related. People just blast up Marin. They get through the light at 2 blocks below us, and there's a curve, and they just come up at an excessive speed. I asked Lori Capitelli when he was my council person to please put in one of those signs that tells you how fast people are going. And the response, who wants that in front of their house? It's I do.
Sounds like you do. Dave, thank you so much. I did want to say, several people have mentioned the need for enforcement, and I have made a note of it. And actually, either tonight or tomorrow morning, I'm going to be reaching out to the chief of police and just asking what kind of enforcement we have on Marin and seeing what I can do. And I think the idea of, Wahid, I believe is that called a speed study? The thing that says fast you're going?
Yes, the radar speed feedback sign. Yes, and I was going to add a couple of things regarding red curbs, Dave. Yeah, we do have to do it, and even if we didn't do it for the lane narrowing, I would jump on it because of the characteristics of the roadway for daylighting, which is law. And to be honest with you, as an engineer, I wouldn't go with the minimums because of all of the issues and sideline issues and angles coming up and coming down. So realistically, even if I wasn't traffic calming it for the safety of pedestrians and others, I would have red curbed it for daylighting purposes as well. So I think we're killing two birds with one stone there. So yes, we do need to red curb it and for a number of safety reasons. And then to Councilmember O'Keefe's point, the good news is after I think prior to my start, the traffic calming program was on pause because we didn't have engineers on board. Now we have associate planner and a great assistant engineer. Both of them have hit the ground running. They're awesome. They've actually taken a huge chunk of our backlogs. We've had 48 or 49 locations. So I encourage you, Dave, to put in your request at transportation. We can
Right.
give you that email address, and I can promise you,
Oh, I have it.
they'll do the due diligence and go through the motion, whatever's warranted, it'll come. And if that's a sign in front of your house, we'll give you the key to the sign as well too.
Okay, thank you.
And go ahead and CC my office if you like with
Yeah.
that email. And I just want to say, well, he's been on the job about 1 year,
A year and a little bit change.
and you haven't been fully staffed for almost all of that time. So he's been doing a great job, and it's going to get even better now that you're
Thank
fully
you.
staffed up. Yeah. Okay, now I see still a few hands up, but I'm going to go to the chat questions. And first one is, will it be possible for fire trucks to drive uphill at the same time as cars are driving downhill? And are these changes being done with consideration for evacuation and fire safety?
Absolutely.
A
Absolutely.
lane in each direction will be provided in both directions continually.
Yes.
So
Yeah, and as I said earlier, that's one of my biggest traits, and I am a strong believer that everything engineers do, we want to make sure that we're not obstructing first responders and emergency vehicles and the evacuation routes, all that stuff. And I know sometimes, we have to say a lot of no's because those are the factors that I think is incredibly important to make sure that whatever we implement, whether it's lane narrowing or chicanes or bulb outs, that we have a solid understanding and commitment that emergency vehicles, first responders will not be slowed down to make sure that people's lives are of priority when something does occur.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, and I'll say from the fire perspective, the Vision Zero and the Safer Streets initiatives, like we're a huge supporter of that. We just want to make sure that we're able to tell our story and work hard with Wahid's team to make sure like we're not also slowing down or limiting our ability to get in. And when we have patients and that area is a higher use for ambulance transports, our District 4 and District 7 in the hills there is that we're also not slowing down that the ambulance is, getting back to the hospital. So it's like we work together, and I think we have a good partnership, and we meet all the time just to really talk through all of these plans to make sure it's very safe, making the street safer, but also, efficient and for our vehicles to get in.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we never sideline the fire department. It's number one, mandatory consultation. The next question is, if you could help clarify, I think there's a little bit of confusion about the connection between vegetation management and traffic safety. They're both good, but how are they connected?
I'll hand it over to John in a little bit, but in order to increase visibility, there's a lot of overgrown vegetation and plants out at the intersections. So 20 feet in each direction. We want to be able to take out the vegetation and be able to put in the landscaping that, as I mentioned, is drought resistant, native, but more importantly, it grows to a specific height that will not reintroduce a visibility issue that causes safety concerns with pedestrians at the crosswalks. But again, as I said, I'll let John jump in, but I know that the fire department has a much more robust program within the hills for other vegetation management, but part of their support in this project is to be able to clear out within their program everything that we need for Marin at the intersections to be able to increase the visibility and go back in with the new preferred plants that the community has chosen. John, anything?
Yeah, I think, and I believe it was Barbara who talked about it earlier, how, some of the circles that there's planning in and some corners we get it really impedes the sight for cars and makes it a lot more dangerous for pedestrians and bikes. So from the fire side is one, we want to help with improving that safety for intersections, which that's where the most accidents occur at intersections. And as well as on the fire side, these plants that are flammable, as I said earlier, however tall the plant is, when they burn, the flames can be up to 3 times the height of the plant. So that in and of itself creates a more dangerous situation when we have any type of fire, emergency, or large fire in the hills. So we really want to focus on getting these plants out that burn at a high rate so that we're limiting the spread, not only, so that we're not going from a fire from house to house to house, but also we want to make sure that these evacuation routes are safe as possible for people, whether they're hiking out because of traffic, whether they're driving out, and us driving in. So we're trying to, even in that scenario, keep it as safe as possible.
Great. And can you clarify while we're on this topic, does the 20-foot vegetation removal include trees?
That's a good question. I think there was one location, if I recall, from last year's several site surveys. There's one location that PRW was looking with the arborist as well to look at the health and condition of the tree.
Yeah, and from the fire side, we were just looking at the plants in the planter between the sidewalk and the street to improve. And then we will look at maybe possibly thinning just a little bit any overhang onto the roadway that's coming out of the public right away.
Okay. What I'm hearing is unless there's a problem with the health of the tree, you're not planning to cut any down, just to trim them. Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing?
I did have a conversation with Parks Rec and Waterfront, and it is not an unequivocal tree removal 20 feet from intersections. That is not the case. There is at least one tree that is at an intersection and it impedes line of sight, and PRW is looking into getting rid of at least one of those trees, but they plan to do that survey in more detail and work with their other interdepartment folks to do that. But yeah, I think we're talking for that 20 feet that Wahid mentioned, it's mainly the overgrown bushes, stuff that's going into the street and getting high enough to where it's blocking the line of sight at the base. Just want to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next question. Speed bumps. Why are speed bumps not being considered? And what about also, while you're on that topic, what about the flashing lights at crosswalks? Like you already mentioned that a little bit earlier, but if you could address why those aren't being considered.
First and foremost, as we discussed, just emergency evacuation, fire access, the trucks and all that, there's no way we want to implement any vertical deflection, any bumps or anything of that nature. And especially coming down the hill, if you can imagine someone not familiar with that area, you hit a bump, we have just created a semi-airplane vehicle, that's going to go over and into someone's property, or God forbid, pedestrians or bicyclists in that area. So for many engineering reasons and also functionality and fire and emergency response, that vertical deflection is an absolute no-no. With 26% steep slopes, that's not happening.
You okay, Wahid?
Yeah, that scared me for a minute there.
Yeah. What about the flashing pedestrian beacons?
So the RFBs, we looked at it. So the Safe Routes to School study that was referred to earlier, it's in the chat as well. We did look at that. Those are good devices in many contexts. There's a concern that those would require tree removal to get the solar coverage to power them. So that's one drawback. What our recommendation for the stop signs and the other traffic control devices is it doesn't require somebody to actually push a button. It actually has it is built into the street's infrastructure to slow people down and to stop and to require stops at stop signs. One thing we were talking that we will still look at feasibility and the need of a rapid flashing beacon per the recommendations of the Safe Routes study, but at this time we're hoping to do other permanent things that don't require additional tree removals or other electrical connections that would cause secondary issues.
And it adds a level of safety also. As I mentioned, this is the area where I can support not meeting the stop warrant analysis to be able to implement it, because again, to Geoff's point, a student or individual does not have to keep pressing it. And we've had areas where unfortunately we put those, and individuals get so relaxed that they don't press it, but they have that false sense of security and just being comfortable to say, okay, I'm next to a flashing beacon. They walk in, and unfortunately, they don't realize you have to press it and wait and make sure that they acknowledge. And having a stop sign just adds a level of assurance that individuals, whether the vehicle or the pedestrians, they'll get some sort of a right-of-way access.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, next question. Where can residents find a detailed document of all these changes? We're sharing this slide deck with people who signed up. But you mentioned maybe there was another more detailed memo coming.
We can, yeah, and that's the next step. So once we finalize what we're proposing with the fire department, we do need to make a couple of more runs at a couple of locations just to make sure that the fire engines and other vehicles clear. I feel comfortable they will. Then we can share, as I said, what I call the complete engineering design package that we'll share with your office, council member, and also Councilmember Blackaby's office, and then use that hopefully to get some good quotes and get the implementation going.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
We'll definitely be sending that out on our newsletter, and if you signed up tonight, we'll absolutely have your email address. Okay, I'm gonna skip that one for now. Will there be liability insurance for residents trimming plants? Is that something you feel is necessary? And who will pay for the watering the plants?
So this is going to be a community contribution. Watering, again, as we mentioned, during summers is once a week, and during winter seasons, it's even less. So that's something that, as I mentioned during our presentation, we are going to work with our council member's office to make sure that we have some sort of a program or commitment, because that is something initially back in 2024, when presenting both options being hardscape or landscape, we knew our challenges and constraints, and we are going to provide the plants, we'll procure it and install it professionally, but we need the community to put in a little bit skin in the game and just water it and give it some love, because it does add to the overall environment of that corridor and aesthetics, which was one of the goals we were trying to find balance. We're engineers and we're trying to put our artistic hat on to make sure it's aesthetically pleasing. So we're going to need a little bit of the community help when it comes to that.
Great, and yeah, we'll be coordinating that. One thing I want to say is one thing I really love about Berkeley, and especially District 5 and also District 6, is there's a lot of community spirit in these neighborhoods, and I've found that often I've always been really impressed by how people really step up to the plate when called to do things like this. So I hope that's the case. We'll find out. Yeah,
Right.
it's a way to give back, a small way you can give back to your community. Okay, next question. Is it possible to make Marin not a preferred route on Google Maps? Is that an option to limit traffic? Is that possible?
That could be one of the positive unintended results of all this traffic calming, right? It's all algorithm. So when vehicles are a little bit more slower, then that also gets automatically populated by every phone that's being used, being tracked by data. So time will tell.
Okay, that's how we control it, by making it
Yeah.
happen. Wahid, can you say a little more or remind us, how is it that the decision is made whether or not to put a four-way stop in? I know there's some really specific criteria you use, and you don't have to go into the full details, but if you could explain that decision-making process a little bit, that would be helpful.
Yeah, there's specific forms and guidelines and counts that need to be acquired through the MUTCD, Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices. That is, one of the state mandate documentation that we follow. But there's also areas within MUTCD and the guidelines that, again, as a licensed engineer, we can look above and beyond. And again, this is a very, emotional topic for me, because there's a lot of individuals who think we can just put something out there and walk away. Unfortunately, that does have a negative impact, and it doesn't follow the established engineering guidelines. Then whoever implemented the engineer gets called in the court of law, God forbid if it's a fatality or injury. In this case, the city has risk and liability too, because they're going to ask, how come you guys didn't follow the established engineering guidelines? That's for the state. And again, as a licensed engineer, there are other elements, there's other areas, but again, as an engineer, they have to go out there and look at it, make sure it's documented. They deem that it is valid and it warrants it, then we can go and implement it. And this is one of those areas that I feel confident we have achieved that, and that's why I want to proceed with it for many reasons. And it can be protected in the court of law, and it doesn't put the city at the risk of litigation based on those aspects.
One thing I've learned a lot about in my time in this office is traffic engineering. I had no idea how complicated and what detailed analysis and that has to be made for every single decision. So it's quite a thing. Real fast time check. We have 10 minutes left on our scheduled time. We have, let's see, about 10 questions left. So we probably will go over time, which I am personally okay with. Wahid and Geoff, do you guys have a little extra time? Are you able to stay a little longer?
We will answer every question, Councilmember.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate
I'll
that.
do my best. I do have to go to the Fire Disaster Commission meeting tonight, so I'll do my best to stay.
Okay, great, thank you. And then also, if anybody has to leave or just didn't feel like they got their question answered, please email my office. We will absolutely get you a response. I promise that. So I want to make sure every single question is answered. Or even if we did answer it and you still don't, you want more information or you didn't totally understand the answer, please reach out. So that said, next question I have is, could the city repaint crosswalks to increase pedestrian safety? I don't think that was one of the interventions you mentioned. And it's noted, the person who asked the question points out that the place where Julia Elkin was hit last year, the crosswalks were actually barely visible. So that definitely could have contributed to that.
Yeah, and we went out there and restriped or refreshed the crosswalks when that unfortunate incident did occur. And one of the things that we're implementing that I'm looking forward to here is actually the striping and other safety elements that we're adding is going to be with thermoplastic. That gives it a lot of longevity, whereas regular paint, it does fade depending on the vehicle traffic or usage. But thermoplastic, you have these visibility beads that are very bright and sharp during nighttime when the headlights hits it or the sun. But also it stays very fresh and visible for almost 8 years. So that's another enhancement that we are going to be implementing. So that way we're not this corridor doesn't experience faded safety striping anytime in the near future, and also helps with control measures. And with our workforce being 26% steep, it makes it difficult to refresh striping there every year, every 18 months or 12 months. So hopefully we'll get a solid 7 to 8 years out of the thermoplastic.
Great, thanks. So what I'm hearing is all the striping will be refreshed in a way that should last.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. Has the city considered adding speed cameras? Now, is that more of a police thing, or is that something
Yeah, that's something that is not part of our toolbox. I can imagine it would have to be something that the council would have to assess, review. But that's definitely
surveillance ordinance.
Yeah, surveillance and all that. But there's technology out there, and I know there's other states that are using it, and that's something that I definitely would like to take a look at and see if we can do a pilot somewhere. But that's long term. But that is an option. AI technology is always on the forefront, and something that I do want to bring in with the city of Berkeley's initiatives.
I'm glad to hear that. And one thing, I said this a lot when I was running for office, is that I really believe in bringing more technology to the police to help them do their jobs better, or help them be more effective at their jobs. That's something that I'm very pro. And I believe, I don't want to speak for Councilmember Blackaby, but my impression is that he's largely in agreement with that. So that's something that I'm certainly open to pursuing, but that would be a larger thing. And we would have to, even if the police wanted to add something like that, it would have to go through a fairly elaborate process to add new surveillance technology. So maybe a good long-term idea that I do support looking into. Okay, next question. Somebody mentioned that there's a broken speed sign. Nemoda A said there's a broken speed sign. I think my staff is saying if you could just email our office that information, and we will absolutely look into it and get back to you. So that's the answer to that question. And that's the case for any sort of observation or concern you have of that nature. If it's just really specific information, please look into this. Please email us. We got it. Even if you're in Blackaby's district, you can email him, of course, but you can also email it to us, and we'll figure it out. Okay, next, could you talk a little more about where you'll be red curbing, and where should we expect to see the red curbing?
The whole stretch on Marin from the circle up to the limit. And that's
Whole
where
thing?
we're going to do lane narrowing and traffic calming. And that's where we're going to be implementing. And like, as I said, it makes a lot of sense because at those intersections, we would be daylighting per law anyways. So it's just extending it a little bit further.
And it
Just
would wrap around the side streets
Yeah,
in most cases.
Right. Yeah, so red curbing all along Marin, and then the first 20 feet of every
for
intersection.
daylighting. Yep.
Yeah. And will be painting the red, because we're not painting the red paint on every curb, at least initially. But that will be part of this.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, next question. Is there any possibility that widening the turn radius at intersections will cause side street drivers to nudge out further and sooner to check for traffic? Is that a concern?
So the curb extensions will make the intersection smaller. The radiuses will not change. They'll just be moved out into the intersection.
Yeah.
But the expectation, or what happens at these intersections is you stop at the crosswalk, you inch out after there's nobody in the crosswalk, you inch out, safely position yourself to make the next decision to get onto Marin. So we're making that, rather than both decisions happening at one location, it gives side streets a little bit more space to get a better line of sight for oncoming traffic. So the goal of all of that is to make pedestrians more visible to motorists in all approaches, but also make motorists more visible to other motorists and vehicles as well.
Thanks. And I think it's worth mentioning that this intervention is not something new that we're trying for the first time. This is a tried and true traffic intervention.
These are proven Vision Zero traffic safety improvements applied on a street that desperately needs them.
Great. Well said. Thank you. Let's see. Have you considered a public safety PR campaign to discourage people from crossing the street without looking? Is that something your office would do?
We're looking at public education and outreach. That's something that we discussed, unfortunately, when the incident in Oxford occurred, because when we looked at and reenacted it with public safety, we realized that I3 BMW, the driver, the age factor, and the individual with the earphones, and there was a lot of unfortunate issues that contributed to that fatality. So that's definitely something that we want to do, and we're looking forward to, but we haven't rolled out a program. We are starting with daylighting. We are working on videos and public outreach information through a video and video clips, and we might, expand on that.
Oh, great. I didn't know that. That's good that you're looking at that. Just something you're considering right now. You're not planning. You don't have a okay.
Nothing on the books now.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Okay. Next question. Oh wait, sorry. Any consideration for not having pedestrians cross north-south on Marin on the west side of the crosswalk? Have them cross on the east side for better visibility for uphill drivers. Is that something you've considered?
Generally, removing crosswalks on a desired path of travel for pedestrian is not typically the first way we would go. Is improving sight lines and reducing speeds are typically that first layer. Inconveniencing a pedestrian even more so seems like not the approach we're trying to take in this phase. But we'll when we look at the intersections of the sight lines and where the sidewalks are and all that stuff, we'll keep our eyes open for opportunities for that.
Okay. Let's see. All right, next. Once the phase 1 quick build option improvements are in place, and traffic speed and flow changes are, or if they are not not observed, how can we get a phase 2 network approach study going? So what's the next step after this is implemented and observed?
It's analysis. To be honest with you, what the data will dictate will let us know what we need to do. As I said earlier at the beginning, everything that we would do is data-driven, factual, and even our post-implementation assessment will catch up that. Every intersection, every issue will capture the data, and then from there we can go back to the drawing board and see if there's additional enhancements or what the issue is to be able to see if we can address it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is you will not drop the ball on this.
No.
Not going anywhere, right? I won't let him, you guys, even if
It's
even if
the
he does it.
the ball's glued to our palms.
Absolutely. Okay, we've gotten through almost all of the chat questions. I think we've gone through all of them actually. So I see there's two hands up. Rachel, I think your hand is still up from before. Rachel, do you have another question? And then also iPad 2. Rachel, do you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I neglected to lower my hand, but thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. iPad 2.
Okay, I think that's me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. You guys are putting in a lot of time and a lot of effort. I'm so appreciative. We've lived for years up here on top of the hill, take Marin all the time, have out of the area friends and family visiting. They get really squirrely about Marin because they don't know which corners, but even we and even neighbors have been talking a lot, especially in the last 2 years with crashes, of how it's hard to remember which corners going up or down. You've got the four-way stops. And I will say going downhill, making a left on Shattuck, the only way you can do that, because coming uphill to Shattuck, you have right of way, you don't have to stop. Downhill, you have to stop, side corners. But you have to pull out into the intersection to see over the steep downhill as to whether somebody's zooming up, because they don't have to stop. And at night in the dark, it's very hard to remember which corner is which. I wasn't sure, Wahid, what you guys were doing. I love the all red curbs. Yes. What if we just had all red four ways at every corner? Nobody has to remember anything. And in the dark, those pedestrians dressed in dark that are jogging will also know. I don't think it would slow the EMTs and fire trucks, because a couple of years back where we had the stabbing up beyond Grizzly Peak, I was starting down the hill and up came 3 fire trucks and then 5 big black SUVs, all racing up the hill as emergency. And they got through those stops and it was safe and no crashes. And I felt safe with them coming up. I just pulled over. So I want to know about those 4 ways. Also, the links for the information, when you do put it out, some folks aren't really getting emails from the city council, etc. They don't log into the city website to find it. I'm wondering if maybe even this slide deck, but when you've got the information ready, could you put links into Berkeley side? So the general public will be logging in too. And it's not just homeowners, residents, and everybody will get more educated. So that's what I'm curious about, is the 4-way stops. And maybe you've already covered this and I just didn't pick it up. Thanks so much.
Yeah. So we are adding 2 new 4-way stops at Oxford and the Craigmont area that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Shattuck uphill, we are not, because we looked at it and it would cause a lot of queuing into the circle. And as I said earlier, we want to look at it holistically. And the last thing we want to do is implement one improvement and cause a bunch of other chaos or issues or concerns or rear end. So, we feel, and then also, regarding visibility, as I mentioned earlier, one of the new treatments that we're going in with is thermoplastic for striping. So again, it has high visibility as these beads. And importantly, when we go in, we'll have the new stop legends on the pavement. So in addition to the signage, there'll be very clear and very visible thermoplastic stop legends on the pavement as well as you're approaching the intersection to help guide you as well.
And reflective in the dark?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And is there a stop going downhill at Shattuck, turning left? I can't remember. Downhill on Marin towards the circle. Is there a stop there? Because if there is, and there's not
Yes.
coming up. You know, if it's inconsistent, that's where people get all confused.
Yeah, I think there is a stop coming
Yeah.
down, but uphill, just for the mention, because when we looked at it, the queuing and the amount of traffic and environmental issues there, it just didn't warrant it, nor could I, support it from an engineering perspective to add it in there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, iPad. Next is Karina.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to clarify, so you're saying that improvements will be completed by early next year? That seems very quick.
Yes, that's the beauty of quick build. And to be honest with you, Karina, this is one of my goals. I heard a lot when I started, and I do think this is a good approach for Berkeley. We have a lot of passionate individuals. We have areas that we can definitely do meaningful improvements. And given our budget and the way we want to roll things out, quick builds is the best and quickest because it gives an opportunity to get it out there quickly so you guys can see it, Karina. But more importantly, it's more cost efficient and also gives us an opportunity to test it and make adjustments without investing a lot of capital or having the concrete cure.
Thank you. And also just another point to clarify, you said the all-way stop control will be at Cragmont and Oxford. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we're hoping also, I know you feel confident you can get this going because this has been studied and analyzed so much. It's not only the case where we, have an idea and then the intervention is done right away. It does take a while, but this has actually been in the works for quite a while. So it sounds like they're ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. This started last year, Karina, and we had community engagements back in September with our draft initial design. So we've been working on it consistently. So we're there and we want to roll out the improvements as soon as possible.
Although we are hoping in maybe a year or two with Measure FF coming in, we're going to hopefully be seeing a lot more work done quickly throughout the city. But anyway, in this case, it's going to happen pretty quickly, which is good. Here's a question, maybe a follow-up to what we were talking about a moment ago. Can you explain why some of the uphill intersections don't have a stop sign when the other ones do?
Geoff, you want to take that based on your analysis?
Yeah, it's more of the historical, and I think this is what we talked a little bit about this at the September meeting, or Hamid was talking about it. I'm not 100% sure the historical reasoning for that, but I believe it was the safety issue of having to stop in the uphill 26% so often that it would cause queues to spill back to the circle, but also would cause more safety from car to car waiting in that, so that the uphill stop control was used sparingly because of that to minimize the opportunities for that to happen. I believe
do you mean
was,
people like rolling back when they take their foot off the gas?
Exactly. Yeah. And when it's slippery and it's just a little bit more secondary issues related to that. It is a unique situation. You don't get that. I mean, Marin Avenue is very unique for the reasons we've been talking about. So I think what we're looking at is matching that up with driver expectation and improved visible signage striping so that it's as clear as we can make it for folks driving.
Thanks for that. Another question, I know we already talked about this, but if you could just confirm, the red curbing on the side streets is also part of the daylighting. I mean, that's part of this project, also part of the daylighting law. Is that correct?
It's the approach to a crosswalk or to a crossing. So, and when we lay out the curb extensions, we'll take that into account. And when we work with fire to understand how their vehicles would access the side streets, there may be areas where that red zone is a little longer to accommodate those turns, but we won't know that until we get into the detailed design.
But it'll be at least the 20 feet. As a state law.
On the approach.
On the
approach.
So if you've got a crosswalk ahead of you, that's 20 feet of red curb. No parking is allowed. But if you're driving and you turn right and you cross over the crosswalk and you're driving on the side street, that could be red curb, but it's not daylighting where it has to be. But the line of sight analysis there'll likely be a lot of red curb on the side streets, mainly just for vehicles to safely and comfortably make turns at a reasonable speed.
Yeah, that is one thing I think some people, it gets left out of the explanation of red curbing, is it's not all intersections. It's just when it's for when there's oncoming traffic and the car being parked there might impede visibility of a pedestrian. So that's only in one direction for each of the streets. Is that right?
Yeah, and we're making a very nice video to our as you mentioned earlier regarding public education. So we'll share that when it's ready. And it's a beautiful clip with our team members that really visualize what we're trying to explain right now. So it'll be easier understood by our community members.
Do you guys have like a social media intern, like some Gen Z person?
No, we're doing it in-house, and we got great young team members who could do anything. So it's been fun.
Do you guys have a TikTok account yet?
I don't know. I think we do. They don't give me the password to it.
Cool. Okay, we're almost done actually. We're doing great. I have two more questions here, and if any more pop up, we'll answer them. Someone made a suggestion that no left turns onto Shattuck off of Marin. Is that something you've considered?
No left turns from Shattuck to Marin, meaning from coming out of Shattuck going up Marin?
I don't think it specifies, but if you could just comment on that.
No, that's from Marin. Somebody just said it's dangerous coming down Marin and turning left on Shattuck. So I just said, well, maybe they shouldn't be doing, maybe that should be no left turn there.
We do have traffic counts for that intersection, and I'm actually looking at it right now. There's only about 5 to 10 folks that were the day that we took the traffic counts. There was about 5 or 6 folks that turned left from Marin onto Shattuck within the peak hour. So it's a pretty low volume turn during the peak hour. But I think it's something that we can talk with staff about to see if that's something we want to entertain, as long as it's not considerably, changing how people would travel through here and cause.
In addition to the low numbers, when we prohibit that, obviously they're going to try to find another route. So obviously those vehicles, whether it's 5 or 10, they are going to get picked up at Oxford or somewhere else. So it gravitates to another section, another location. So that, again, we have to take all those factors into account when we analyze this.
But it moves to a place with 4-way stop. That's the danger at Shattuck, that it's a 3-way stop. And that's what the person was talking about.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate that. So last thing, we're getting quite a few questions about the circle itself. I know it's not actually part of the meeting. It's, as far as I understand, it's not part of this set of improvements. But before we jump off, Wahid, do you have any thoughts about improving traffic flow and safety on the circle?
I'll be honest with you. I haven't looked at it at all, council member. I haven't analyzed it. I've heard of issues, and again, it's a result of losing the brakes or vehicles running into it because of speed. And I'm hoping that through this project, that we are going to address the root cause of some of those issues at the circle. But if it's something that council member you'd like us to look at, we'll be happy to schedule it and get to it and take a look at it, as long as we know what the issues or the goal of the issues are that we're trying to address or evaluate.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I'll follow up about that.
Sure.
I know one comment that I've heard and that I agree with myself is it's strange that some of the approaches to the circle have stop signs and some of them have yield signs. And that seems like a weird inconsistency that should be looked at. But I'm sure there's many other.
We can definitely take a look at it.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that is all the questions. I hope we got it. My staff was very diligently watching the chat. And yeah, if we didn't get anyone's questions, or if you don't feel like it was answered, like I said, please reach out to my office and we'll make sure we get your question answered. So let's see. So as Deputy Director Amiri mentioned, public works staff will procure the landscaping, but after that, the responsibility of landscaping watering will shift to adjacent property owners or community members. We'll have to see. So if you are interested in helping to maintain and water the landscaping, please do reach out to my office. We'll also be sending out some further communications about that, trying to see what interest there is in that. But I really do hope we can come together and support that. Watering plants is very therapeutic if you haven't made it part of your life. So with that, we'll wrap up. And please be on the lookout for a follow-up email with a link to the recording and any additional information. I hope we can share the slide deck, and of course any other information we'll be sharing out here and via my newsletter and every other way that we can. And I'm sure Councilmember Blackaby will be doing that as well. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, taking an active part in your neighborhood safety. I really appreciate the community spirit and the interest that was shown here today. I want to thank Councilmember Blackaby's office and, of course, our wonderful public works staff and fire department for all your thorough work on this project. And also, I think most importantly right now, just for taking the time to really answer everyone's questions and present it so carefully. It's really it's really helpful. I think you can see there's a lot of interest in this, and I just really appreciate you taking the time. And thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the support.
Thank you. And once again, follow up with my office if you have any questions. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.